It's really cold today, so let's talk about shrinkage. Bear with me. I've been hooked on Warhammer Fantasy Battles since the 4th edition in the 90s. The game uses regiments of 28mm miniatures, and while they're not large, once you have more than a couple on the table with terrain, it gets crowded real fast. The game is played on 8x6 or 6x4 tables, and let's just say modern apartments don't all have the space for that the way some houses did in the 80s. And while playing on a smaller table is possible, it takes away a lot of the maneuvering, which makes the game tactically challenging. Now, in 2000, Games Workshop did release a 10mm scale wargame called Warmaster, which uses 10mm miniatures. That also needs a large table, but what if I took the Warmaster minis, Warhammer rules, and replaced inches with centimeters? I could play a game on a much smaller area. Luke from Geek Gaming Scenics had already tried this, so I knew it could work. I just had one question. Do I really want to build terrain that small? I knew I could, but I didn't know if it was the kind of thing I enjoy, so I built a test piece. I was also a lot less careful with measuring and aligning, so I could see what kind of error tolerance I could get away with. Totally not because I'm lazy. Blocking out the building is exactly the same regardless of scale. In this case, I made 2 large blocks for the top and bottom of a tower, and 2 very thin strips for the ledges between the floors. To make the parapet on the roof, I sliced a piece of the top floor, and then made an inside cut for the wall. It worked okay, and would have worked even better if I had turned the wire temperature lower at the start of the cut. As it was, it left a small gap, which isn't too visible after painting. To give the lower floor a bevel, I used a piece of scrap to push the bottom of the floor away from the fence. At this point, I glued the pieces together with PVA glue. Since I wanted to texture these, I made sure the glue didn't go all the way to the edges, as this makes a hard surface that won't take texture. Next, I marked and cut out the doors and the window. This would have been easier if I had done it before gluing. In any case, the doors would be filled in with pieces of coffee stirrer, and the window gets painted solid black, so the inside face doesn't really need to be terribly neat. I textured the walls and ceiling the same way I usually do with a pencil. Texturing at this scale isn't any harder than larger scales, it just needs to be tighter. I should also have used a ruler to mark out the joint lines on the walls, as keeping straight lines with tiny increments is much more difficult. The trickiest part here is deciding what detail to keep and what to leave out. The paint up went rather quickly. I tried to use the same techniques I used for stone, and dry brushing worked well, though the ledges still got in the way. I did make them far too wide though. So here we go. The answer to my original question is yes, I will enjoy making terrain in this size. And while building is pretty fault tolerant, I will have to be a lot more careful with detailing. If you want to see more terrain builds in other scales, check out this playlist. Bye!